My claim is that atheism has to be defined as a belief in no God, and that defining it any other way, such as just the lack of belief in a God, pushes the goalpost down that will still lead to the definition being the belief in no God. While one can easily look at the definitions of atheism throughout time, and how it was commonly used throughout history to determine that my claim seems to be correct, I will not take that approach, as some individuals claim that words, definitions, and uses change throughout time. I don't disagree with that, and that will lead to a whole different conversation on who determines when does a word use change from its original meaning. And while I do not deny that the practical uses of the words may vary among social groups and throughout time and space, the logic of defining atheism as something along the lines of without theism, or just the lack of belief in the existence of gods, without claiming that also means the belief in no God, does not follow logical consistency. Now to get started, I assume there should be no controversy in defining theism with the belief that there is a God. Now I will use the word God when explaining my definitions, even when theism involves gods with an S or labeling them as just deities. It would just be simpler to use just the words God in a sentence, instead of just speaking it every time of deities or with S. Now, there are multiple different approaches one can take when defining atheism, but one of the most common ways that some atheists will want to define atheism is the lack of belief that there is a God. Some individuals claim that this definition is a lack of the positive claim of theism, and it does not mean that one who has the lack of belief that there is a God must believe there is no God. That would be a logical claim if atheism only deals with that specific definition. But there needs to be one more question that needs to be asked. What is the belief that there is no God? Now, I experienced some individuals that claim that the definition should refer to one that's ascribed to not theists or self-acknowledging atheists or anti-theists, etc. I will use the terms strong atheism to describe that belief there is no God, and weak atheism to describe the lack of belief there is a God for now. If atheism was defined such a way, it would be logical to assume that everyone who is a strong atheist will also be a weak atheist, but not that every weak atheist will be a strong atheist. One must acknowledge that believing there is no God is a positive claim as much as believing there is a God. If I look at the sun and say there is no sun, that is a positive claim. One cannot say, since we have the evidence of the sun in the sky, we can see it. Saying there is no God is not a positive claim, since there is not enough evidence on that, or that thousands of years ago someone didn't wake up and said there is no such thing as God. For example, let's imagine a scenario with two individuals. Person A asks Person B, is the saying there is no God a positive claim? Person B responds with no, because he believes the default position is non-existent. The phrase there is no God is not a positive claim since there is no evidence for God. It seems Person B has circular reasoning. Now look at this example. Person A responds with a different but similar question asking, is there is no moon a positive claim? But seemingly Person B responds with a different answer. Yes, because he believes the default position is its existence. The phrase there is no moon is a positive claim since there is evidence for the moon. Seems to be another example of circular reasoning. Person B has performed two begging the question fallacies and one special pleading fallacy. Person B stated there is no God is not a positive claim because the default position is non-existent, but then goes on to say there is no moon is a positive claim because the default position is existence. Then again, the default position would be subjective and one must be consistent when determining the positive claim, especially if it deals with God. Now, believing there is a God is currently defined as theism, with the lack of believing in a God currently defined as atheism, or in this case specifically weak atheism. Therefore, one may be able to amend the definition of theism to be the lack of believing there is no God, and more specifically weak theism. There will be positive claims of strong theism and strong atheism, i.e., I believe X and not X, and negative claims of weak theism and weak atheism, i.e., I lack the belief of X and not X. I can therefore say things like, babies are born theists because they lack the belief there is no God. Theism is the default position because we lack the belief there is no God. Just because a theist lacks the belief there is no God doesn't mean we believe there is a God. Theism is not an affirmative belief that there is a God, nor does it answer any other question about what a person believes. It is simply a rejection of the assertion that there are no gods. Theism is too often defined incorrectly as a belief system. To be clear, theism is not a belief in gods or an acceptance of gods. It is the lack of belief in no gods. We must be consistent. A theist can claim the same thing some atheists do. Now, I believe that most theists don't say those phrases because I believe some theists know that it's pointless to add those extra stipulations. They believe there is a God. But some individuals don't think that applies to atheism. Some may believe somehow that is not a claim and excuses them from requiring the burden of proof. No, this does not excuse them from the burden of proof. Burden of proof can still work with a negative claim, and I'll probably go over that in another video. But for this discussion, we must be consistent with both sides. Here, we have strong theism, the belief there is a God, strong atheism, the belief there is no God, weak theism, the lack of belief there is no God, and weak atheism, the lack of belief there is a God. Now, to make things simpler, I acknowledge that all strong atheists should be weak atheists, and that should apply with theists. All strong theists should be weak theists, but shouldn't work going backwards. Now, a weak atheist cannot be a strong theist because they are opposites. One is the lack of the other. Same with weak theism and strong atheism. But can one be, according to the definitions, both a weak atheist and a weak theist? Absolutely. You can lack the belief that 31 teams will win the Super Bowl next year. Lack the belief that a man is guilty or innocent. Lack the belief that there is a sun in the sky and no sun in the sky. You just lack the belief. Now, these break the four choices down to three categories. Category A is strong theism, the belief there is a God. Category B is strong atheism, the belief there is no God. And for now, Category C will use both weak theism/atheism, the lack of belief there is a God and there is no God. One must fit into one of these three categories. If someone says they lack the belief there is a God, fine. It must be asked, do you believe there is no God? If they reply with yes, they'll be quote-unquote a strong atheist. But if they do not believe or have a lack of belief in that, then it could be said they also lack the belief there is no God, implicitly or explicitly. This can work the same way for asking someone if they lack the belief there is no God. Now back to Category C, it should not be called both weak theism/atheism. Do you call someone who lacks the belief of the Chiefs or the Eagles winning or losing the Super Bowl a weak Chiefs/Eagles believer? I wouldn't call him anything, but one can wish there was a term used to describe that category of lack of belief. That is not just a combination of saying weak theism and weak atheism. Agnostic for those who are just listening. So for now, we have strong atheism and strong theism. If there is no weak atheism or theism, let's just remove the strong. We now just have theism, the belief there is a God, atheism, the belief there is no God, and agnostic, the lack of belief there is a God and no God. Now I try not to care what someone says, I believe I'm X. You can believe whatever you want to believe. The issue is when you say I am X and this is what X means. Words have meanings. Now, I believe I demonstrate how largely to use these certain words. So when someone says they just lack the belief in a God, but do not lack the belief there is no God, they believe there is no God. That is atheism, a belief.